India says it is prepared to take back citizens residing illegally in the United States after meeting in Washington between Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Just days into his second term, U.S. President Donald Trump has made immigration a top issue for his administration. Mr. Jaishankar says New Delhi is in the process of verifying who could be deported, adding that while Indian talent deserves maximum opportunity at global levels, New Delhi opposes illegal migration. Neha Poonia joins us live from New Delhi. Neha, for many Indians, the U.S. could be said to be a destination of choice. How will these new moves impact the Indian diaspora in the United States?
Well, it's interesting, the sort of comments that Dr. S. Jaishankar, India's foreign minister, made in that press briefing to journalists in Washington, D.C. The clear distinction that India is trying to draw is between legal mobility and migration and illegal mobility and migration. Dr. S. Jaishankar saying India has always categorically opposed illegal migration, saying it's not good for the reputation of any country. And this is not a stance he's taking in specific to the United States. He's saying this is true as far as India is concerned for every country in the world. But at the same time, he said that we want Indian talent and Indian skills to have the maximum opportunity at a global level, saying this is mutually beneficial for both the US and for India. And, this is where that distinction is going to be important, because Dr. S. Jaishankar also said that he wants to ensure that this legitimate return of illegal Indian migrants from the US is done after ensuring they've been identified as Indian nationals. And, sources in the government have been speaking to say that this is not an issue that's only just come up with the Trump administration. Last year, when it was the Biden administration in the White House, you had India flying home 100 illegal immigrants from the US, and the message from New Delhi being it'll very much take responsibility for those who've entered the US illegally. Why this is important is because there are about 2.9 million Indian immigrants living legally in the United States as per latest data, but unlawful border crossings that are accounted for by Indian nationals are just about 3%. That number has been rising in the last few years, particularly at America's northern border with Canada, where a quarter of all illegal crossing attempts were made by Indians, and that's where this concern is stemming from. But India hoping that by sort of being so open and accepting of this concern that the Trump administration has presented, it'll then be able to protect its legal migrants working in the US, particularly on the H-1B visa and the L-1 visas.
So, Neha, this is just days into a new administration in Washington, but India will need in the days, months and years ahead to balance its ties with Washington while protecting, as you mentioned, the interests of all its nationals working and living in America.
Absolutely. And this is a concern that, was flagged even when the presidential race was on in the United States last year. And repeatedly, Indian government officials, from the external affairs minister down to sources in the foreign ministry have repeatedly said that India has experienced dealing with the Trump administration. The last term was dominated with issues about mobility, about trade, and India very much, preparing for these to become issues in Trump's second term as well. But that's why what Dr. S. Jaishankar said is an interesting approach, according to experts, is saying that by being so frank, by acknowledging that this is a concern for the US, India is showing a willingness to deliver on the issue of illegal mobility and hoping that this will be enough to mollify the Trump administration and ensure that it doesn't then target legal migrants living in the US or target India over trade issues, given that Trump has called India a big abuser of tariffs in the past. There's also, of course, this whole camaraderie between Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi. We're talking about both sides trying to orchestrate a meeting between the two leaders as early as in February in Paris. All of that being done behind closed doors. And it's interesting that one of the first few engagements that the new Trump administration held in Washington, D.C. after Trump was sworn in was with the Indian side. So experts, former ambassadors, all very much encouraged by this and saying that India has very clearly demonstrated it's willing to work with the Trump administration and do what is needed to ensure this bilateral relationship doesn't get derailed.
Oh, thanks. Neha Poonia there reporting live from New Delhi.